Okay, my number 10 is yet another movie that could be considered a 2016 movie. But again, its wide release was January of 2017, so that is why it is on my list. It is Lyon. Now, it wasn't the first movie I saw in 2017. I think the first movie I saw in 2017 was Hidden Figures, but Lyon was either second or third. It was up there. And it's still in my top 10 because I loved the story, acting was amazing, the cinematography was great, the score was another thing that I loved in this movie. It's really a heartfelt, really a edge of your seat type movie when you see this kid lost and all alone in India and the crazy stuff that people chase after him for, because I don't know, was there a lot of pedophiles in this place? Because he definitely had a rough time trying to run away from a bunch of people that wanted to grab him. But the journey of this kid surviving and how he ends up in Australia and then how he grows up not remembering his past and then suddenly remembering that, hey, I'm starting to remember that I was from somewhere else in India and that I had a life and I had a family, and then his search to figure out where he came from is an important and a really great story to watch. It was one of the few films where at the end of the movie, I teared up. Alright, my number 9 is currently the only animated film so far this year in my countdown, because there are a few films that I thought was amazing or just good animation, but there really wasn't a lot of them. There was a lot of mediocre animation and there was a lot of really bad animation this year. And there is some that I haven't seen yet, such as Breadwinner and Bird Boy, and there's a few other ones that look very interesting and very unique. Loving Vincent as well. Haven't seen any of those, and so far the only one in my top 10 is Coco, which honestly, Coco had no competition this year. The only ones that came close are films that are considered 2016 films, which, because of their wide release in the US, they're 2017 for me, and those are My Life as a Zucchini and Red Turtle. They're the only ones that come close, and in a way they probably should be better, but Coco was amazing. It was one of those films that I just loved the story, I love the art, I love the culture that it tries to tell, and it really gets into the Day of the Dead and the celebration of family and one's and ancestors long dead. And it had a lot of really unique things that I was worried it would be a little too much like the Book of Life and share too much from that. But it makes it on its own and has its own unique ideas that are different from the Book of Life and a different art style. And ultimately, I just loved it. And I especially loved the ending and what it's all about by the end. Just one of the best Pixar films, in my opinion. Alright, number 8 was yet another really fun ride. It is Baby Driver. It could almost be considered a musical, just how they implement all the songs and just how choreographed everything is. This was a fun, entertaining, hell of a ride. Loved everyone in it. Kevin Spacey was great. John Hamm was great. Ansel Elgort, or how you pronounce his last name, he proves that he can be an action star. And yes, he's not that big of an action star in this movie still. He has his own thing that he does in other movies, but when it comes to the foot chases and the chase scenes and the car driving, I'm like, okay, this guy could be an action star. He's got what it takes. Now, for the most part, it is cliched and it does follow along the same paths you'd expect in this type of movie, especially with the first 2 acts. But once the 3rd act happens and the twists and how the villains alternate in this movie, I loved the last act so much that it bumped it up really high for me. Baby Driver, is my number 8. Alright, my number 7 is a movie that I recently saw, didn't get to review it. A lot of these movies I didn't get to review because I didn't have time. But this was the only movie in December so far that is worth seeing. And I was surprised how so many fans absolutely hate this film and think it's worse than the prequels. Wow. I didn't get that at all. My number 7 is The Last Jedi. I love this movie, and I know that it's one of those movies that doesn't have a lot of things going, and honestly almost feels like it's trolling the audience a lot, so maybe that's why people don't like it. But I love that about this movie because of how the story is ultimately about failures and learning from your failures and all these different twists and all these sort of how ultimately the rebel story is just them trying to survive and just trying to stay a couple steps ahead of these the bad guys before they blow them out of the sky. There's this impending doom while there's still hope. And yes, there is some cheesy moments in this movie. The dialogue isn't as good as the rest of the movies or the other ones that I've liked. And there is a few storylines that are not all there or all that developed. But ultimately, I love the movie. There was a lot of kick-ass moments that just made me cheer. There is a lot of weird moments here and there. And the humor doesn't work for me, but at the same time, the humor didn't feel out of place to me. A lot of people hated the humor, but didn't feel out of place for me. So ultimately, a lot of the things that a lot of people hated, I guess, I didn't mind. So honestly, I loved it. It's my number 7. Alright, my number 6 is my favorite superhero movie this year. And that is Logan. Ultimately, it feels like if Logan were to be mixed, or Wolverine would be mixed with Hell or High Water, with having that subtlety and having that kind of story and that dramatic depth to the characters. That's what it's like for me. I love Hell or High Water. I love Logan. It's one of the few superhero movies that makes the superhero trope and the superhero cliches work in a way that actually feel realistic and feel grounded, honestly. And Hugh Jackman was amazing as Wolverine, as usual. He gets a lot more to do in this film. Patrick Stewart was amazing as well, and I like the twists that they have with Xavier and the things that he's going through. And the little girl, Daphne Keane, amazing in this film as well. I loved Logan. I really did. Alright, my number 5 is yet another divisive film that a lot of people hated. In fact, I think myself, my sister, and my cousin were the only ones to not only sit through the entire film, but love the film, because almost everyone in the theater walked out except for another group in front of us, and that group got up at the very end and said it is the worst film they had ever seen. They should have went to see 47 Meters Down. Yeah, that was not much better. My number 5 is It Comes at Night. And it is a horror movie. It is a horror movie. And I loved it. I loved the suspense. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the cinematography, the music, the score. I loved the characters. Everyone made sense. Everything made sense in this film, as long as you paid attention, and I didn't get confused whatsoever, and I loved it. Alright, now my number 4 is a little tricky because my number 4 is technically my personal favorite movie of this year, but this countdown is sort of an average of my personal score and my more critical score, so ultimately my number 4 is Blade Runner 2049. It is my personal favorite film of 2017, but because this countdown is the average score of my personal score and my more critical score, it got bumped down to 4, unfortunately. Almost everything in this film is absolutely breathtaking visually. The acting is amazing, the score, everything is everything I wanted in a Blade Runner sequel, and might even be better than Blade Runner. Director, I've been a fan of his work ever since I first discovered him in Prisoners, or his work as director for the movie Prisoners. Ever since then, I have paid attention to what he's done and looked forward for another film that he's done. And when he got Blade Runner sequel, I was worried, but at the same time excited, and he delivered. My number 3 is another recent movie that I saw, and I was so glad it came to our theaters because I was worried it wasn't going to come. It ended up coming a month after it was supposed to come. It was 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and I loved every minute of it. Sorry, I coughed there. I'm not used to talking so long because I haven't done a movie review in quite some time. But 3 Billboards, all the characters were so dynamic and actually complex. And this movie dares to actually have character development for characters that are despicable and someone you would absolutely hate in the real life and in movies. Like Sam Rockwell is this terrible racist, this bully, this guy who sees a badge and just sees power. And they actually have a good character developing moment, a character arc with him that doesn't feel forced and is actually pretty damn amazing and made me care about the character. In fact, a lot of these characters are despicable. There's a lot of characters that are unlikable, but they have these moments throughout. Every single character has these moments throughout where they have a bit of humanity. There's only one character that is terrible throughout the entire film. Everyone else has some moment of humanity that you recognize, and they show a little bit of the humanity and the beauty, even in a world that's chaotic and crazy. And it has that sort of comedy world where things are crazy and over the top and they really wouldn't work in the real world, but it's done in a satirical way, in a dark way, in this gritty way that is just damn amazing. Acting is phenomenal. I think there's only one actress that I didn't like in the movie. Everyone else I loved. Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, they were all 3 amazing. And if none of those 3 get some sort of Oscar nomination, there is something wrong. Alright, my number 2 was yet another movie that surprised me. It came out, I was so glad it came to our theaters. It is Wind River. And the writer of this film, I have been an admirer of a lot of his stuff. He wrote Hell or High Water and he wrote Sicario. And then he wrote Wind River and directed for the first time Wind River. And I was a little nervous with him directing for the first time, but this was probably not as good as Hell or High Water. But honestly, all 3 of those films, Sicario, Hell or High Water, and Wind River, are pretty damn amazing. Great modern westerns, and all of them have a very similar theme. Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen were amazing in this film. And honestly, another really great supporting role in this film was Gil Birmingham, who was also in Hell or High Water as the partner to Jeff Bridges. Now, the murder mystery itself isn't all that compelling compared to the rest of the film, but when there is action, it is dynamic and awesome and quick and brutal. And the drama involved in this film and the themes and the, not persecution, but this sort of everyone just like not caring too much about the Indians. It is amazing in this film. Heartfelt, heartbreaking. God, I love this film. Now, I can almost feel the hate and the downvotes that this countdown will get just because of my number 1. And it's not because it's a divisive film, but honestly it's because it is, to many people, a 2016 film. And it feels like a cop-out. But honestly, I never got this film in theaters, which is absolutely surprising to me, especially since we got a trailer for this almost the entire year of 2016. But it had a wide release in January 2017. So for me, it is a 2017 movie. It is A Monster Calls. Yeah, I never got this film in my hometown theaters. That is insane to me. Now there's two genres that I love and I'm biased towards, and that is horror and fantasy. And this is a fantasy movie, a smart fantasy movie with great drama, and ultimately it is about a kid coping with his mother that is slowly dying of cancer, and this giant monster is giving him these 3 different tales that are supposed to help him in life and help him cope with his mother and see things in a different perspective, and not all black and white, but there is gray. And fucking amazing, alright? I loved it. So, those are my favorite films of 2017. What were your favorite films of 2017? Go ahead and list them below. Did you like the movies that I liked? Did you hate the movies I liked? Go ahead and comment. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And get ready for the worst of, because that's coming next. And trust me, I have a lot of bad movies to talk about. So, thank you for watching. This is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.